Does this sound familiar, the rush to create new citizen voters? Well, watch this. Before Bill Clinton ran to be reelected in 1996, his administration accused of rubber stamping hundreds of thousands of illegals as brand new citizen voters. All told, an estimated 1.3 million immigrants were quickly made citizen voters in 1996. That was triple the 1995 total. But back then, basically what happened was we saw a U.S. House subcommittee claiming that thousands of criminal background checks were rushed, letting in, quote, drug dealers, rapists, and murderers. That's the quote from the U.S. government. They were sworn in as citizens. And at that time, the Wall Street Journal reported, quote, in the end, the Clinton-Gore White House got their 1 million voters in re-election. The U.S. got 75,000 new citizens who had arrest records when they applied, an additional 61,000 given citizenship without even having their fingerprints submitted, so that no check was possible. Trump campaign national spokesperson Katrina Pierson joins me now. Good to see you, Katrina. Katrina, even Al Gore said back then that the Democrats are at risk of running, he said this, a Democratic voter mill. And the concern is that might be happening now. Have you heard any talk about that?
Well, of course we've heard talk about that. This is the way the liberal government runs things. There have been reports out in California where there's actually tax dollars going to nonprofit organizations who were tasked to go out there and get these individuals signed up to vote. And this is how your government works today. And there's no wonder why people have lost all faith in the government. We now have this Inspector General's report that shows many of these individuals were from special interest countries, meaning hostile nations, or even terrorist nations for that matter. Some of these individuals, which have ended up in law enforcement lists, some of them have security clearances, for crying out loud. We are not safe. Donald Trump's campaign has been highlighting these things from the very beginning. My question is, was this intentional? Is anyone going to be punished for this? Will there be any accountability at the federal level on how this process took place? The answer is probably not.
Yeah, Katrina, back then, Democrats are arguing, well, the immigrants were, they were rushed to become citizen voters because the GOP was threatening to cut their benefits. But you know what? Gore at that time complained that INS bureaucrats were hindering efforts to create 1 million voters by Election Day. I mean, what do you think the consequences of this could be?
Well, again, this is just another opportunity to create more Democrat voters. I mean, this election is extremely close, and 100,000 votes could change it in one of these key states. We now know that the administration is pushing for 100,000 more refugees. And Mr. Trump was criticized early on when he was telling all of America that it's not just 10,000 refugees that this administration wanted to bring in. We find out that there were outposts bringing in tens of thousands of more. And they're not even telling American citizens where these refugees are going. And we know for a fact they cannot be properly vetted, and this goes to prove it. Yeah. Donald Trump has been saying this from the beginning, and he is the only one that wants to fix it.
And the point is to that, and the media doesn't report this, but European media is reporting it. ISIS is embedding terrorists in the refugee flow. There's sleeper cells now throughout Europe. That's a concern. Let's shift to the next topic. The number of illegals who are supposed to have been deported. This is a story we was talking about at the top of the hour and yesterday. It's actually more than double the 858 initially reported. Now it turns out the Homeland Security mistakenly gave citizenship to 1,800 illegals from countries that pose national security concerns, including terror hotspots. Katrina, we've got Senator Ben Sasse out of Nebraska saying, you know what, here's his quote, "This is a bureaucracy that blunders so badly and is one that doesn't take our national security seriously." I mean, are you seeing that on the campaign trail?
Well, absolutely, and these are just the things that we know about. Imagine what has been happening that Americans don't know about. This is one of the issues of transparency that Mr. Trump wants to bring to the forefront, because the bureaucracy is so big and completely careless. We have another candidate, Hillary Clinton, who wants to bring in 550% more of these refugees, knowing we cannot vet them. And as you mentioned, the European governments are already reporting, and even our own national intelligence is telling Americans that we cannot vet these individuals because there are no fingerprints, there are no records from these nations. But yet, Hillary Clinton is running her campaign on bringing tens of thousands of more, and I can guarantee you that these refugees are not going to be resettled into the gated communities of the politicians. They're going to go into the suburban areas. They're going to go into the inner cities. This is why we have so many people struggling today, because we have an entire party, the Democrat Party, that is insistent on creating new voters rather than doing what they are supposed to do, and that is to represent the people.
Yeah, and Katrina, to your point, FBI Director James Comey said, you know, you can query a database until the cow comes home, but if the database doesn't exist, you can't vet. That's a direct quote from James Comey.